Investors often chase after new tenants, but tenant turnover can secretly drain your profits. Every empty unit means lost rent, extra marketing, and costly make-readies for new tenants coming into the units. The smartest operators know that keeping tenants happy is the real key to success. In this video, John and I, we're going to be diving into powerful retention strategies, uncovering how to create a resident experience that keeps occupancy soaring, and revealing those small tweaks that can boost your net operating income big time. Stick around, this one's going to be a game changer. John, it's great to be here with you.
Yeah, Mark, this one, is top of mind for me because actually at Faris Capital Partners, we always start our goal setting with the resident in mind. And that's that idea. We want to serve 10,000 residents in our first 10 years of operation. So we really think about the resident first because we know if we take great care of them, they'll in turn take really great care of our investors. And, in business, often what you see is, businesses get really good at acquiring new customers, but they sometimes forget to nurture those customers. So, over time, they reduce their client acquisition costs, right? Because they keep people happy and keep them in the business, in their product longer. In our world, that's these apartment buildings. So big topic we talk a lot about at Faris Capital Partners.
Yeah, right on. And if you are interested in investing in real estate and you can't find a great deal, go to fulloutinvesting.com and you'll be able to find out what our 10-step full out investing process looks like. We also have a sample deal in there as well that you can click on and find out what a potential next deal will look like with us. We are getting closer to our next acquisition. And if you are interested in learning more, go to fulloutinvesting.com and you'll have all the details there to be able to make a good next step. And you can book a call with John and myself as well. So, John, in regards to this turnover, so this is something that's significant. When you have clients, and that's the way we look at our residents, they're clients. And so for us, we have this mission of providing the best living experience in the world. And it only makes sense that you treat them really well. And a lot of the strategies we're going to be talking about, they really don't cost much, if not anything. It's a little bit of effort. And so if you can keep your existing residents and you can continue to raise rents because just a reminder for the listeners out there, there's no rent control in the markets that we invest in, which means that on the renewals or 1-year renewals, we can raise rents to market value and there's no restriction like in some of the rent control markets, say like in Ontario and Canada and California and some of the New York, and it's area dependent. But these cities that we're investing in, there's no rent control, so there's no limit, which means that if we go the extra mile and treat our residents like gold, we will be fairly compensated by that, which means that when we raise the rents, we give first by giving an excellent customer service, and then what happens on the renewal, we can start to bump rents up. And what's happening now in our communities is now we're starting to get some wait lists in some, like in our Largo property, for example, there's a wait list now on our 2-bedrooms is because people just want to stay in the community and they are okay paying a little extra. They know they're paying a premium rent, but they also know they're getting excellent service on that end, which adds much more to the bottom line and ultimately better returns for investors.
That's right. And, for maybe somebody who's newer to this or just learning about it, you may say, well, what if we were able to bring a resident in maybe at an even higher rate by bringing in a new resident over one that's already there? We have a modest rent increase versus bringing somebody in maybe with more aggressive. But the reality of that make ready, right? When we have somebody move out, we have to go in and sometimes replace flooring and carpet, repainting. Then you factor in that unit downtime, and then the additional marketing expense, the time away the leasing manager has to dedicate. So all those factors get factored in. And so sometimes you're better off just raising the rent, say 3.5%, 4% with an existing resident versus getting maybe a 5% rent bump by putting it back out on the open market. Now, all that said, we want to push rents to market and maximize that net operating income, but we do it in a thoughtful way because that customer we have today, that bird in hand is worth more than two in the bush sort of approach. So that high retention leads to steady cash flow. It actually lowers our operating expenses because we're eliminating that additional marketing and make ready expense. And then the tenant quality, right? Because we have a known resident who's paying their rent and likes the service we're providing, and so that's less stress and strain on the on-site team, right? So they make better decisions. So So, it's something all operators should think about, but candidly they don't, and we can tell because the first thing we check when we look at a deal is the reviews, and more often than not we find bad resident reviews. So it's something that we focus a lot of attention on.
Yeah, right on. So any sort of turn, as in when a resident moves out and you have to get somebody in, I mean, that can cost anywhere from like, 2,500 to 5,000, depending on how much damage is done. But like paint, carpet, repairs, cleaning, you got to make it nice for when the new resident moves in, right? And so this becomes really, really, really important that if you're going to run your building, run it so that you retain as many residents as possible. And a lot of the stuff that we're going to be sharing, it doesn't cost a lot. So the high retention side of it, and that as a focus point, should be one of the main priorities for operators out there.
So it all starts with getting the right resident in the building from the start. So having a very robust screening process. So ensuring you're leveraging modern tools to, make sure that you're bringing in residents and you're verifying their income, their employment, their criminal history, and actually proactively checking their employment. We don't just take their word for it. We actually call the employer and get a word verification. That criminal background is so critical because ultimately, one bad apple can ruin the bunch. And so if you have somebody that's disruptive in there, it actually detracts from the overall sense of community, which we'll get a little more to just in a minute here in the podcast. But that sense of community is something we're very thoughtful about creating. And so a bad resident can destroy that or certainly cause harm to it. So very robust screening is critical because one bad resident is more destructive than, say, a vacant unit, right? In terms of potential loss of income opportunity there. So getting that right from the start is critical.
Right on. So 2.5 to 3x their rent is what their income. So that's one of the qualifications as well. We run credit checks on them, and we want to make sure there's no prior eviction, stable employment, and this at the end of the day, if we take those steps and ensure that we're gonna have somebody strong that we can back up. Because if something goes sideways, the property manager needs to have backup. Say, hey, listen, I've taken all the steps. So, we've learned through the years of what works, what doesn't, what to look for, and what not to look for, or what we can maybe we can maybe let that slide. But if you have that robust side of it, it's such a strong, we'll say, downside protection in a market where you just never know, right? So it's that protection side of it's really, really, really important.
That's it.
So next is the move-in experience. This is something that we have a number of guarantees that we said, you know what, we want our buildings to be different. And so when you have residents moving in, first it actually backs up to the resident walkthrough. So when new potential residents walk into our community, we have a whole walk score, as in we have a map of where we want the property manager to actually walk the new resident through. And along the way, one of the steps is actually to explain our 3 guarantees that we have. So John, do you want to talk a little bit about those guarantees that we have to, and this is why we put these guarantees is to be able to ensure that the resident has no reason to be able to take this step forward. That if we can lower their anxiety and offer a guarantee to be able to take some of that uneasiness on making a decision off the table, then there's going to be a higher conversion rate of them saying, yes, we want to stay here. And so that actually leads into the better overall move-in experience, which is one of our guarantees as well. But why don't you take us through those guarantees there, John, and maybe I'll jump in as we go here as well.
Absolutely. So we wanted to make sure, to your point, that a resident had no reason not to sign with us. At the end of the day, our view is that if we don't sign them, the next apartment building will. So we want to make sure we capture that lead that came through, give them an exceptional experience with this curated walk tour you just mentioned. But the 3 guarantees really tie everything together. So the first is that happy in your home. So we say in the first 30 days, if you find that you're unsatisfied with the living arrangement that we offer you, you can just simply let us know and we'll let you out of the lease. So maybe the person moves in and then realizes the commute is more, lengthy than they realized, and it's, putting undue pressure on them, or maybe the school's not the right fit, or maybe they just don't like the community for one reason or another. We allow them to walk away because ultimately, if somebody's unhappy and we don't, then we may now have a resident that creates some challenges for our leasing team. But at the end of the day, it's all about that resident and making sure they have a great experience. Then we have the in your corner guarantee. Now, this one was one that we first thought of because we recognize that life happens. Maybe your job gets relocated to another city or your company does a downsizing. So in other words, if you're terminated from your job or your job changes fundamentally, say like once again due to location, we don't want that resident to be in a situation where they have to make a decision whether they're going to skip on their rent or not pay their rent. So we just make it easy for them if they can come in and document that major life change that they didn't cause on their own, right? So getting fired is a little bit different than say their job situation changed, or maybe say there's a health issue or something like that. We'll allow them out of their lease. And then the third one is really important to residents. It's the speedy service. In fact, if you look at reviews for apartment buildings, the number one reason apartment owners get negative reviews is because poor execution of maintenance requests. They just don't follow up. They take too long. And so in our world, that looks like a 24-hour guarantee. We're going to fix that issue within 24 hours unless we need to order a part. But the further component to that is if we miss, we owe them a Visa gift card. But if it is, say, for example, going to require that part, we have a cadence of communication that is required to take place. So we're constantly updating the resident as to the status. And so, if your toilet's clogged or your garbage disposal is broken, that'll have a fundamental, impact on your experience in our building. And you shared a story on a podcast a few weeks ago. Your barber there, the guy they just didn't fix the toilet for 6 months, and he had his brother-in-law come in and do it, and he was so frustrated by the whole situation he moved after 9 years or something like that. So that resident would have absolutely stayed in that building had they just fixed the toilet, right? It's such a simple thing, but they made it very difficult, right? So those are our three guarantees, and it's pretty unique. We haven't seen many other operators offer these types of guarantees, and we really absolutely think it gives us an edge.
Yeah, for sure. And being that there's no rent control, we can actually provide that's one of the things that we go above and beyond to ensure that the clients are saying, or the residents are saying, wow, this is really great. I'm okay paying a little extra. So the guarantees, which then leads into the move-in day. And so this move-in process is something that you can really wow somebody or you can really disappoint someone. So just simple things like providing a welcome package. So, a little small gift, little business coupons with some of the surrounding businesses and around, a guide to the property there as well. And then just doing a follow-up check-in of how's everything going? Just a call or an email. It just makes them feel valued because there might be something in there just, they're upset, but they're not letting you know, and they're just going to go online and post. And so we want to be proactive with a lot of this stuff. And so with that, the goal of all of this is to build a community that tenants just don't want to leave. And so, John, with your and my background, building businesses of strong cultures, this is like at the DNA. This is right at that kind of foundational level for us. Is okay, we want to build Faris Capital Partners to be a great place where people love to work, but we want to build communities in all the communities that we buy. We want to build them in a way that aligns very similar to how we run our businesses and how we built cultures overall. Because I think it was Jack Welch that said, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." And so that's where I'd say that in our experience, we have a lot of success in seeing the results by building strong culture. And it's no different when you're building a community where residents are living. I'd even argue it's even more important. If you have one bad resident that's causing issues, it just creates headaches, just like in a business for everyone. And the beauty with the rules in these locations we're buying is just we can just not renew the lease. Mm-hmm. And we can continue to give 5-star service to all of our other residents. So building a community that tenants don't want to leave, that's really the mission of Faris Capital Partners.
That's right. And, often it's the small details that make all the difference. So when that move-in occurs, the unit should be spotless, right? We have it professionally clean, just super tight. You mentioned the gift, right? And often we, give the coupons and some of those things, but small things like shower curtains and just to make it easy for them to move in, some cleaning supplies.
That's a big one, John, the shower curtains. Because it's when initially we started walking through properties, I noticed that all the model suites, the models didn't have shower curtains. I'm like, are you guys providing shower curtains? Like, no, we don't provide shower curtains. And I was like, why not? So when a resident moves in, they got to go buy a shower curtain. They can't have a shower on that first day, or maybe they forgot to bring one. And so it's just one of those simple
Yeah,
little
that's right.
things that's like, oh, that's great. These guys are thinking about us.
Yeah, yeah. So, and then along the way, we just try to foster that sense of community. But that first week check in is a big part of it as well. And, if something is wrong, a lot of people suffer in silence, right? Or once again, they go online and post it there. So by being proactive and just asking those questions, we survey our residents along the way as well, just to get any feedback. We want to ensure our property management teams are delivering the, experience we expect them to deliver. But then sometimes we can get some good intel from those residents. Maybe they're doing a great job on the property management level, but the resident says, this would be neat. And it's like, wow, that is a good idea. We can maybe think about that going forward. So, once they're moved in, then what we need to do is build that sense of community, right, Mark? And really kind of like, you talked about it a minute ago, but that culture component. So let's talk a little bit about community. Here's some great example. And this is something actually Asset Living, who we work with on the Largo deal, had shared with us they've never seen before. So we actually, once we complete our full out 28-day transformation, so that's where all the exterior renovations are completed in the first 28 days, the amenities are refreshed. We actually then do a resident event, and we go down personally, Mark and myself, and in some cases we actually have flown the whole team down, like the entire Faris Capital Partners company. And we bring in a food truck, the Kona ice truck. We give some prizes out, maybe a month free rent at the top, but TVs and toasters and other little smaller things too. And it was so much fun. But the most valuable component is Mark and I and the team were talking with residents and asking them, what do they like about the community? What would they like to see different in the future? And, we just get so much great feedback. But at the end of the day, what's most important is the residents see, like, man, like the owners actually showed up. That's pretty cool. And so when I go back to the property management, I asked them the question. They said, well, normally what happens is they sponsor an event, but they don't show up. And then it's like some cube cheese and maybe like some wine, and like 3 people show up. But in our world, we're like, a lot of our residents are working class, middle class people. Let's give them a free dinner. Let's make it easy on them that night. They don't have to cook anything for their kids, and like have some fun. And we had a DJ, right? And so it's just this thing. We turn it into a bit of a party. But for us, it's really just so the residents feel heard and seen, and they know a new operator's in town. Sometimes in their mind, they think, great, they're going to jack up our rent. So we want to make it clear to them that while, yes, we may be raising rents over time, we're going to be raising the value that's provided.
That's right.
Such that they don't, feel that it's a raised rent. It's more that they're getting more value for their rent. Mm-hmm. And that's super important to us.
Yeah, for sure. And so having communication platforms like Facebook and WhatsApp is another way for communication to flow as well. And that's something that, we set up. Referral programs is another thing to reward tenants for bringing in their friends to the community, because that's what we're seeing a lot of now. It's like, wow, you guys, I can't believe that your community is doing that for you. And now they're talking, and we're getting more and more referrals. So referrals in any business is one of the best types of clients that you want, because they're already pre-sold. And so likely they're already, we'll say, pre-qualified in a way, because if an existing resident is in our building and they're already paying rent and they're already, we'll say, part of that culture, they don't want to have a friend that's not going to be part of that culture if they're going to have a referral. So they're already kind of pre-qualified being a referral as well. So we really love when we get those referrals, and we actually offer incentives for our residents to be able to take that action.
That's right. And Mark, I think we may actually just do a whole podcast just on the community component, because I got like a million other things we can share, just little tidbits and things we do along the way that just help, whether, we find out someone with a health issue, but that sense of community is so critical. That's our goal. We want to build a community, not an apartment building, right? Like we want to build communities that people want to come back to. So, when you're thinking about those lease renewals, one thing you can also consider is just little incentives. And we're not talking about free rent here, but a great example actually is we had a resident at one of our Charleston assets, and we recently acquired a new building that have some townhome style units. And resident was very happy with our service and his unit, but he was outgrowing it. And so, saying, hey, look, why don't you come down over here and check out this new unit at Strawberry Station? And, you might like the experience over here. You have 2 floors, gives you a little more privacy. And some operators would charge a transfer fee for doing that, but we waived that. So we filled that unit, and then we opened up a unit at the other building that we could renovate. So that's kind of a way that we could work with the resident to make sure their needs are met, and then keep our buildings full and not have to go out, because every time we, have to market the property to bring in a new resident, there's a cost associated with that. So by minimizing or eliminating that. So some of the things we might do is, upgrade. So for example, maybe we put in a new stove, or maybe we put in some new appliances. We would do that after they moved out anyway. So why not just go ahead and offer to that existing resident, give them that, added value, increase the rent, but keep a resident in the building and happy, right?
Yeah, right on. So just quickly here before we wrap up, here are some key metrics to track. So the average renewal rate out there is in that 60 to 70%. We really target between 75 and 85% renewal rate. The average length of tenancy, the longer the better, but we aim for at least 2 years. Maintenance response time, but we put this guarantee in to be able to transition those maintenance issues and transition them off their plate as fast as possible, because faster response time equals happier residents. And so tracking that is really important. And if you offer a guarantee, that's just bonus, because they know going in that if they would have had that same issue in a previous community, they know that's not going to be a problem here. And so we take that off the table. And then online reviews and ongoing feedback. The online reviews, this is something that John and I, in all of our communities, we personally get this. And John, that's something that you've done, which is awesome. Any negative reviews, if they ever do come in, that's like personal response that's coming in now on Google. So that's something, just being very hands-on on that is we'll just say, I think it's a very good investment from an ownership perspective.
For sure. We see every review. Thankfully, we generally only get good. I think we've only had, I can't even actually think of one bad review. If we did,
I think we had one there that came through.
There
was the one that just is like, oh, okay, that's good. We got something, and we fixed it.
Hey, it's a lesson, right? Nobody's perfect. But personally responding to those reviews. So just to be clear, I personally respond to those reviews online. We don't delegate that to the property management team, and I personally sign it with my information. So if somebody wants to track us down, and in fact, we had a situation recently where a resident did call us at the office, and we're like, oh gosh, I hope everything's okay. Well, they had called us to tell us what a great experience they were having. So that was kind of cool. But yeah, these are key insights, guys. And if you're investing, whether it's a single family home or a 4-unit apartment building, or maybe you're an operator listening to this, put a lot more thought and focus into that resident experience, and the profits will follow.
Yeah, you got it. So if you are interested in learning more, go to fulloutinvesting.com, and you'll have our 10-step full out investing process all fully explained in there. We talk about our 3 golden rules, how we protect the downside, and there's also a sample deal on that landing page as well. And you can actually go ahead and book a call for any questions that you have with John and myself. So thanks for listening, guys. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and share with other high net worth investors that you think will benefit from it. Thanks for tuning in to the Multifamily Investor Playbook. We love and believe in you guys. Keep dreaming and investing big.